There are mornings when the world moves as if it remembers you, and yet you move as if you've forgotten yourself. You wake up with that strange, muted heaviness, a feeling that isn't quite sadness, isn't quite exhaustion, but something quieter and far more disorienting, a kind of emotional fog that settles over the day before the day even begins. It's the kind of feeling you don't tell anyone about, because it's not dramatic enough to deserve concern and not visible enough for anyone to notice. It's just a vacancy, a dimming, a slow unthreading of your connection to things that once made you feel alive. Maybe you've been here for a while. Maybe you've adjusted so well to the numbness that you've forgotten it wasn't always this way. You remember versions of yourself that felt lit up by simple things: sunlight through blinds, the hum of conversation in a cafe, the anticipation of seeing someone you cared about. And now those same moments wash over you without leaving any trace. This is the core pain no one warns you about: the quiet collapse, the emotional slowdown, the gradual withdrawal from your own life. You're not crying, you're not breaking, but you're not here either. You move through the day like someone trying to hold a radio signal that keeps drifting into static. You catch fragments of the world, an instruction from a coworker, a text from a friend, a memory that flickers and dies, but you can't hold on to anything long enough to feel it. People talk to you, but their words land like soft knocks on a locked door. You answer automatically because your mouth knows the choreography, even when your mind doesn't. Someone might say, "You seem fine." And technically, you are fine, functioning, responsive, not in crisis. But that's the problem with this kind of pain. It hides behind the appearance of fine. There's a version of burnout people understand, the dramatic kind, full of tears, breakdowns, pleas for rest. But then there's the version no one sees, the burnout that drains your capacity to feel anything at all. A burnout not of effort, but of emotion. A burnout that places you in quiet suspension, not drowning, not swimming, just floating. And floating sounds peaceful until you realize how terrifying it is to drift away from yourself. You start to wonder why everything feels so muted, why joy barely flickers, why conversations feel slightly delayed, as if your reactions have to travel through layers of cotton before reaching your face. Why even simple decisions feel heavier than they should. This is the emotional landscape many Americans silently walk through every day, especially the ones who appear high-functioning. The ones who hit their deadlines, answer emails, laugh when they should, and keep the machinery of adulthood running, even though the engine inside is barely alive. It's not depression in the dramatic sense. It's not hopelessness. It's not despair. It's the loss of resonance, the loss of inner volume, the loss of feeling like a participant in your own story. And this is where the unraveling begins, not with pain, but with its absence, not with sorrow, but with the inability to access sorrow at all. You don't miss happiness. You miss the feeling of feeling. You miss caring. You miss being moved. You miss being touched in ways you can no longer access. And so, you move through your life with the exhausted grace of someone holding onto a rope that's slowly sliding through their hands. Not enough friction to hold on, not enough force to let go, just drifting. You walk into your kitchen on a Tuesday morning with that same unfelt heaviness trailing behind you like a second shadow. The air is still, the light is soft, and yet something feels slightly off, as if the world is half a second ahead of you. You open the fridge, not because you're hungry, but because the motion feels familiar. You stare inside for longer than you intend to, letting the cold air spill out onto your skin. You touch a carton of eggs, a container of blueberries, a forgotten leftover from 3 nights ago. You're not choosing. You're reminding yourself you still live here. The coffee maker gurgles in the background. Its sound is usually comforting, but today it feels distant, flattened, almost mechanical. You pour the coffee, watch the steam rise, and wait for the warmth to spark something inside you. Anything. But nothing happens. It's just heat in your hand. Just another morning ritual carried out by muscle memory. You step outside for air. The Portland sky is washed in pale gray, the kind that promises rain but never commits. Cars move along the street with their predictable rhythm, and for a moment you watch them like you're watching a documentary about a life that vaguely resembles yours. Your neighbor waves, you wave back. Your face knows how to smile without asking for permission. Your mouth performs its usual upward curve, but internally there's no echo. Walking down the sidewalk, the world feels both too close and too far. The smell of damp trees, the hiss of tires on wet pavement, the faint chatter at the bus stop, they all reach you but fail to land. Like someone knocking gently on a door you're too tired to answer. You think, when did this distance begin? How long have I been living slightly behind my own eyes? You remember a time when mornings carried a kind of quiet anticipation, when the simplest moments, rain on the window, the warmth of your dog leaning against your leg, the hum of morning traffic, felt like invitations to enter the day. Now, everything feels like a faint replica of itself. Sound without resonance, color without depth, life without texture. You pass a cafe where people sit at small wooden tables, talking with their hands, leaning in close, laughing in bursts that fill the air. You feel a pang of something, not jealousy, not sadness, but a kind of dim remembrance. Oh, right, I used to feel connected like that too, but the memory doesn't sting. It just passes. Another ghost of another version of you. When you arrive at work, you slip into the familiar autopilot. Computer on, inbox open, fingers moving. Your coworkers make small talk you know how to respond to, even though your mind feels miles away. You watch yourself from inside your own head, moving like a character, performing a role they once loved, but now barely recognize. You are both the actor and the audience, both present and absent, both here and elsewhere. There's nothing obviously wrong. You're not overwhelmed or panicked or falling apart. You're simply uninhabited. And this is the part that scares you. You don't know how to get back inside your own life. You don't know how long you've been living at a distance. You don't know when the world stopped reaching you, or when you stopped reaching back. Your brain isn't malfunctioning. It's protecting you. And the way it protects you can feel like it's abandoning you. When emotional numbness sets in, it's rarely because you did something wrong. It's usually because your nervous system reached a threshold and quietly switched into survival mode. There's a mechanism in the brain called downregulation. It happens when your internal stress levels remain high for too long, weeks, months, sometimes years. The brain can't keep running at full emotional intensity without burning out, so it starts dimming the system, like turning the lights down in a room that's been too bright for too long. Dopamine receptors, worn out from chronic overactivation, begin to respond less, not because you lack motivation, but because the reward system is exhausted. Your limbic system, the part of the brain responsible for processing emotions, starts to buffer signals the same way a computer slows down when too many tabs have been open for too long. Nothing is wrong with you. Your brain is simply choosing survival over sensitivity, endurance over experience, and cortisol, the stress hormone, doesn't just make you anxious. When it lingers too long, it numbs you. It makes the emotional world harder to access, like trying to feel the texture of fabric through thick gloves. This is why you can be deeply exhausted without looking tired, why you can appear functional while feeling hollow, why the world feels muted even though your senses technically work. There's also something called emotional dampening. It's the brain's equivalent of noise-canceling headphones. It tunes out emotional static so you can keep going, but in the process, it shuts out joy, curiosity, connection, even the subtle sparks that make life feel meaningful. And then there's dissociation, the subtle kind, not the dramatic kind portrayed in movies. In everyday life, it feels like you're watching yourself from slightly outside your own body. You're present but detached. Time feels slippery. Memories feel like they belong to someone else. It's the mind's emergency brake, a way of saying, this is too much to feel fully. Let's reduce the impact. The hardest part is this. You won't always notice when these systems activate. The brain doesn't send alerts when it shuts down emotional bandwidth. It doesn't announce the numbness. It simply withdraws. And by the time you notice something's off, you're already deep inside the fog, already running on minimal internal resources, already adapting to a life that feels quieter than it should. But none of this means you're broken. It means you've been carrying more than your nervous system could metabolize. It means you've survived environments your brain had to protect you from. It means you've been enduring in silence for far too long. One of the most misunderstood truths about emotional numbness is that it doesn't come from failing to care. It often comes from caring too much, for too long, without enough rest in between. You may think of yourself as someone who has always pushed through, someone who carries their responsibilities without complaint, someone others can rely on, someone who endures without asking for help. But that identity, strong, capable, self-sufficient, has a cost. When you're the person who holds everything together, you never quite learn how to fall apart. And when the collapse finally comes, it's not explosive. It's quiet, slow, internal, a kind of emotional erosion, not a landslide, a wearing down. This is why numbness feels so strange. It doesn't match the story you've told yourself about who you are. You're supposed to feel deeply. You're supposed to care. You're supposed to show up with your whole self. And now, suddenly you can't. Not because you're unwilling, but because the system that once fueled your emotional life is offline. You start to question your identity. If I don't feel anything, who am I? If I can't feel joy, does that mean I've changed? If I can't connect, does that mean I've lost something essential? The truth is simpler and more forgiving. You haven't changed, you've shut down. Like a city experiencing a blackout, the structures are still there. The homes, the streets, the memories, the inner world you once knew. The electricity is simply out, and a blackout is not the same as destruction. It's a pause, a forced stillness, a moment before reboot. Sometimes numbness is just your body's way of saying, I've been signaling distress for so long that I ran out of volume. Your sadness didn't disappear. It got tired. Your joy didn't vanish. It got buried under the weight of survival. Your motivation didn't fail. You simply ran out of emotional oxygen. This is the paradox of emotional numbness. It feels like emptiness, but it's actually the residue of overwhelm. It feels like nothingness, but it's the echo of everything you've been unable to process. It feels like disconnection, but it's a sign your mind is overprotecting you. And in a way, this numbness is honest. It's telling you where you've exceeded your limits. It's revealing the parts of you that have been overextended. It's the body's final strategy when every other signal has gone unanswered. You may not feel anything right now, but the numbness itself is proof that you once felt everything. This emotional dimming doesn't exist in isolation. It's part of a larger pattern, one that intersects with burnout, stress, unresolved trauma, overstimulation, and the impossible demands of modern life. High-functioning burnout, for example, rarely looks like collapse. It often looks like numbness, not being unable to work, but being unable to feel anything about the work. Chronic stress creates a similar freeze. Your nervous system gets stuck in a low-grade survival mode. Not enough to panic, not enough to rest, just enough to dull the edges of everything. And then there's overstimulation. The constant stream of noise, notification, obligation, comparison. Too much incoming information and not enough emotional bandwidth to process it. Slowly, the brain begins to protect itself the only way it knows how, by turning down the volume. Even unresolved emotional wounds, old disappointments, quiet neglect, unspoken fears can contribute to this shutdown. Not because they're dramatic, but because they were never processed. Unfelt emotions don't disappear, they accumulate, and eventually they crowd out new feelings from forming. The numbness becomes a shield, a buffer between you and the world. A way to move through life without constantly touching the raw edges inside you. But here's the part that often goes unseen. This numbness is relational. It affects how you connect, how you attach, how you interpret others. You may start withdrawing, not out of disinterest, but because connection requires emotional energy you no longer have. You may feel distant even from people you love deeply. Their presence doesn't hurt you. It simply doesn't reach you, and so you drift, not away from them, but away from yourself. This drifting shows up in the smallest moments. Not replying to messages even though you care. Not feeling excitement even when good things happen. Not feeling hurt even when something should hurt. Not being able to name what's missing. Not being moved by things that used to stir something deep. These are not signs of failure. They're signs of depletion. They're signs of a nervous system that has carried more than it can metabolize. They're signs of a self that has survived at the cost of feeling. And still, within this muted world, something remains alive. Something small, subtle, and easily overlooked. The fact that you notice the numbness at all. You may feel disconnected, but the part of you that observes the disconnection is still awake. You don't pull yourself out of emotional numbness by force. You don't push your way back into feeling. You don't fix yourself with productivity hacks or motivation. Recovery from numbness is about reintroducing the body and mind to safety. Not dramatic safety, quiet safety, subtle safety. The kind your nervous system can recognize without feeling threatened. Start with micro moments, not gratitude lists, not affirmations, not choose joy slogans, but sensory anchors. A warm mug between your hands, a breeze against your skin, water on your wrist, the texture of fabric, the weight of your feet on the ground. These small sensations are invitations back into your body. Your brain may not react right away. That's okay. You're not doing this to feel better. You're doing this to remind your nervous system it's allowed to feel at all. Soft consistency is more powerful than intensity. 5 seconds of noticing your breath, 10 seconds of sunlight on your forearm, a quiet moment of letting your shoulders drop. These seem insignificant, but numbness doesn't break with grand gestures. It breaks with repetition, with gentle reminders that the world is not a threat. Connection also returns in microdoses, not full conversations, not heavy vulnerability, just presence. Sitting with someone without needing to perform, listening without needing to reply perfectly, letting yourself be seen even when you feel blank. And the most important part, allowing the numbness to exist without judging it. When you stop fighting the emotional emptiness, you make space for the first flicker of sensation to return. Your nervous system doesn't open all at once. It opens slowly, cautiously, like someone peeking through a door after a long period of silence. Eventually, there will be a moment, maybe during a walk, maybe during a conversation, maybe during a memory, when something small breaks through, a spark, a pang, a warmth, a flicker of recognition, and it won't feel like a transformation. It will feel like, oh, there I am, not fully, not dramatically, but undeniably. Healing from numbness is not about regaining intensity. It's about regaining access to yourself, access to reality, access to the gentle resonance that makes the world feel like it belongs to you again. If you're here, in this muted, half-present space, you're not lost. You're in transition. You're in the in-between that people rarely talk about because it's not dramatic enough to name. The numbness is not a void. It's an echo. It's the sound of your mind recalibrating after carrying too much for too long. And even if you feel disconnected from your own life, the part of you that's watching, noticing, narrating, that part is still alive. That part is quietly searching for a way back. And it will find one, not through pressure, not through force, but through gentle reminders that you deserve to inhabit your own life. The numbness you feel is not proof that you are fading. It's proof that you've endured. It's the pause before reconnection, the stillness before return, the quiet where your nervous system rebuilds itself. So, if everything feels distant right now, if you're moving through your days like a ghost in your own story, know this. You're not disappearing. You're recovering, slowly, quietly, in ways you can't see yet. And one day, without warning, the world will reach you again. And this time, you'll be here to feel it.